everyone. I want to welcome you to our topic of the week, which is sales tracking, and I think we're going to have a very, very exciting program. Next slide, please. I'm going to do this almost at every one of our webinars. Just state that our mission at Cashflow Engineering, we're a training and advisory company helping CEOs, business owners, and key managers build simple and effective systems that deliver consistent, predictable, and sustainable cash flow. The objective of Cashflow Engineering is to view your company as an investment. In other words, think about the stock market. If you put in $1, you wouldn't want to get 87 cents back. You'd want $1.25. And so if you start looking at your business as an investment, not only will you get your salary, but you'll be able to parlay that into dividends, distributions, and ultimately the value of the company, which can be sold at some time in the future. Basically, our promise to you is that running a business is a learned skill. We may have technical skills that got us into the position where we own businesses, but running a business is a different skill than creating a product or service. And again, we're offering education and training that allows you to diagnose, fix, and in a lot of cases, avoid costly problems that plague small businesses at the fraction of the cost of high-priced consultants. In other words, we're a less expensive alternative to those high-priced consultants, and that's our goal, is to make these tools available to you. Next slide, please. So today's topic is going to be dealing with the 7 numbers. As always, all of our topics tie into enhancing your cash flow. And today we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the number of leads and your sales conversion rate and how to track that. Next. And so I'm going to be turning this over to Forrest Dombrow. He's a friend of mine, and I met him in a very peculiar way. I was watching his emails and his marketing, and I thought, oh my gosh, this guy really knows what he's doing. And Forrest happens to be in the same town as I am, which is Denver, Colorado. And we started a conversation, and we realized that he and I were working on a project that had a similar benefit. So I asked Forrest to lead this because he's more into sales and marketing, and specifically branding, than I am. And he started and sold 4 companies. He's worked on sales and marketing programs for over 100 different businesses. He's an attorney. I don't think he still practices as an attorney, and a speaker on branding, product development, and marketing. And he also has a very, very similar mission as to Cashflow Engineering, which is helping companies generate a consistent flow of high-quality leads and sales. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Forrest.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you having me here today. I feel like we might have a little bit of a lag on the slide, so if we do, just chime in and I'll slow down, okay? So thanks everybody else for joining us today. What we're going to be talking about is how to easily track the numbers that drive your sales. And as a consultant that has worked with a lot of different businesses, and the name of my company is Solve Sales, so everybody obviously comes to me with sales problems. So at the end of the day, almost everybody I work with is just not getting enough sales. But there's a lot of different issues with their sales problems. And as Jeff mentioned, we're going to be talking today about the first 2 numbers that kind of make up most of the sales problems I see, at least at a high level. It's either a lead issue or some sort of sales issue, right? But we want to dig deeper than that, and we want to give you some tools to be able to really dig into the numbers that can help you diagnose and solve your sales problems. So again, at a high level, I tend to see sales problems in sort of three flavors. There's either a volume issue, like there's just not enough activity, not enough leads coming in, not enough sales. On the other side, I sometimes hear, I get a lot of contacts and we're talking to a lot of leads, but the quality is poor. Nobody has the money, or they're just not the right fit, or there's some sort of quality issue. And of course, in many cases, we're having both volume and quality issues. So at a high level, those are the problems that I and cash flow engineering solve, at least as it comes to the sales and marketing side of things. And when people come to us with these problems, I tend to see three mistakes in trying to solve those sales and marketing problems over and over again. And so I want to go through these three mistakes, and then we're going to end today's presentation with an overview of a tool that will help you solve most of these mistakes. So the first mistake involves taking a trip from New York to LA. Let's say you want to plan a trip from New York to LA, and you decide you're going to take a car to get there. Now, a car is a system, right? It has a lot of different parts. Some of those parts are essential, and like this car on the screen here that's missing its wheels, it's missing a key component, and it's not going to work. It's not going to get you from New York to LA. Other parts of the car maybe aren't quite as essential, like let's say the radio. It adds a nice feature, but you don't actually need it to drive. The important part here is that we need to take a systematic approach to sales and marketing. And I know what everybody basically knows what a system is, but I think it's useful to look at a quick definition to help frame the rest of today's conversation. So a system or a machine is an apparatus that has several connected parts, each with a definite function and together performing a particular task or an output. So with a car as a system, the output, the primary output is transportation, getting from point A to point B. And when it comes to sales and marketing, we need to take the same sort of approach. And so I'm going to go over just some really high-level basic versions of sales systems here. On this slide, we've got three cogs. And again, this is overly simplified, but when you're trying to generate leads and sales, you need to have some form of advertising or marketing or outreach to get attention. Then you need to send that attention or direct that traffic to something. It could be a website. If you're in a retail business, it might be the store. If it's an online business like software, maybe it's again to a website. And then as people are interacting with you, they eventually raise their hand as a lead or a potential prospect, and you have a sales process. Now, as you can imagine, like our car example, if you're missing any of these wheels, you're not going anywhere. So if you have a website, and it could be an amazing website, but no traffic, you're not going to get very far, right? This is pretty basic and obvious concepts. What I'm going to show you next is a little bit less obvious. So when we're talking about systems, whether they be marketing systems or physical machines like a car, we have to understand that there are systems within systems. So in a car, for example, the engine is not a solid piece of metal. It is itself a system inside the larger system that makes up the car. And even within the engine, there are subsystems and different parts of that engine. And the same is true with your sales and marketing systems. So for example, a lot of people think of their website as just sort of one thing. It's the website, right? But the website itself is a subsystem with various parts like design, development, the technical aspects that make it work. And then there's the content, which could be copywriting or video or pictures. And as you can imagine, if anything's missing, it's not going to work very well. So maybe it looks really cool. The design is fantastic. But if the content is substandard or is missing, or if some of the links or technical functionality don't work, just like our car example, you're not going to get very far. And as we were talking about a system and output, the output of your sales and marketing system is obvious. It's leads and ultimately sales and money. And so we need to have all these parts and take this systematic approach. So what I see, besides the fact that a lot of customers don't even have a system mindset in the first place, even if they do have sort of a systematic mindset, they tend to be missing pieces in their system. Again, maybe they have a great website but not traffic, or they're doing social media but they're not sure what to do with all the likes and things like that on their Facebook page. The other issue is there's often broken parts or poorly configured parts, and I don't just mean technically broken, like they don't work, but again, poorly written copy, things of that nature. So maybe they have a complete system, but their tires are bald, using the analogy of the car. And then the other thing I see very commonly is disconnection. So I mentioned social media a moment ago. I see this all the time with search engine optimization and SEO and social media, where a company owner will hire a social media guru, and in the contract it says, I'm going to write X amount of posts per month, and the goal is to get 500 fans, and that's all fine and dandy, but several months down the road, the phone's not ringing, and the owner calls up the expert and says, hey, I'm not getting any leads from this social media stuff. What's going on? And the social media expert says, well, look, I did all the posts that I promised, got you all these fans, and I delivered exactly what I told you I would. But it's not actually connected to the rest of the system in any way. There's no specific way to turn those fans or likes or Twitter followers into actual leads and customers. So again, missing parts, poorly configured parts, and disconnected is what I see over and over. And so the first mistake, key takeaway here, is to create a consistent flow of high quality leads and sales, the mission of cash flow engineering and Solve Sales. You must use a complete integrated system and not a few random disconnected parts. So what I want to share with you today initially is a system. This is a system that I've developed and that cash flow engineering embraces. It says it's for service businesses, which it was designed for that, but most of the elements here would apply to any business. I'm going to go through each of these quickly because we're mostly going to be focusing on the tracking and optimization piece on the bottom today. We do have entire programs that actually walk people through this whole system and help them implement it into their business. But the first part is a population in pain, and that's about identifying the target personas or customer groups that you want to go after, really getting intimately familiar with their pain, with their problems, so that you can start to create in step 2 what I call a viral solution. That's essentially your product, your branding, your core messaging. Most marketing consultants, when they get to that part, they'll talk about things like a unique value proposition or unique selling proposition, the 1 or 2 reasons that you're unique and different and valuable such that people should pick you. In our model, we like to take it a step further and build in the psychological drivers of viral referrals or organic referrals. So it's kind of a more advanced way to develop products and brands and services that really are going to connect with that population and their pain points that you've identified in step 1. I want to point out a subtlety. When I say pain or problem, sometimes that could mean something like a teenager really wanting to get those new hot sneakers that are really popular. So it's not pain or problem in the physical sense necessarily, but it's a need at the very least. So those are the first 2 steps, and those are some areas where I feel like people tend to be lacking. They kind of go to market with an average offering, and they just try and use the rest of the steps. They try and get to marketing and doing social media and all the hot new marketing tactics without really having a solid foundation in their target market and their solution. Assuming you have those things covered, we move on to basic brand assets, things like websites. Depends on your business. Some people might have a fleet of vans that they want to wrap with graphics. Obviously, things like business cards are appropriate for most businesses. So the important part about basic brand assets is making sure they convey the unique solutions that you came up with in step 2 and are really going to communicate with the population you identified in step 1. Because when you get to step 4, which is where most people go immediately when they try and solve their sales problems, is to the marketing. Let's do more marketing. But if you try to do more marketing without fixing and having a good foundation in the first 3 steps, it's not going to work very well. That's one of the other mistakes I see very often. So the client attraction tactics are, that's where you get into the actual tactics, the online advertising, the trade shows, whatever you might do to attract people to your brand assets. And then, of course, a simple sales process. So that's whatever process you use to meet with people, present your products and services, and convert them to paying clients. So that's a high-level overview of the system. And the first mistake is you need to take a systematic approach, and it leads right into the second mistake that I see all the time, which is this. So even if someone kind of knows they need a system, they tend to focus on the surface symptoms rather than the root causes. So if they're not getting enough leads, they immediately blame their website, or if the salespeople aren't closing enough deals, they immediately think they need sales training. You might need a new website, maybe you do need sales training, but what if the product and service you have is really not very unique and valuable to the market? That's a root cause of potentially surface symptoms. So it's really, really important to take that type of approach and not just look at the top level things and just try and fix them sort of willy-nilly. And I think the analogy here that everybody will understand is when you go to the doctor, no matter what you walk in the door with, whether your head hurts or your elbow hurts, doesn't matter. What do? They take your temperature, they take your blood pressure, they do a diagnosis, right? They don't just immediately start prescribing pills or solutions without doing a bit of diagnosis and exploration. Um, the same is true with sales and marketing, except most people don't do that. They just think, my Facebook's not working, turn it off, let's try something else. And they just they're sort of just taking pills, right, without really digging underneath the hood to understand what the problem is. So if you're not getting enough leads or sales, don't immediately jump to conclusions. You need to start to diagnose things. And that's the second mistake or key takeaway, is to solve any sales problem, you must first diagnose the root causes. And the third mistake that I wanted to cover today revolves around our systematic approach and diagnosis. So the first two mistakes kind of lead into the third one. So now we're going to plan a sales trip, not from New York to LA, but from your current level of sales and lead generation to where you want to go. So let's assume, for the sake of argument, you currently get 5 new customers a month and you want to get to 10. And you want to build a system to help you get there. Now, the truth is, whether you knew you needed a systematic approach or not, you have a system. It just might be missing parts. This red car here illustrates a highly tuned, complete system. You might have something that looks more like an old rusty junker if you're missing parts or things are poorly configured. But the question is, how do we get from 5 to 10. And so when clients come in the door, that's the first thing I ask them is, where are we going? What's the number we want to hit? And then I start to diagnose, like I was just explaining. So I'll ask a question like, well, how many leads do you think you need to get 10 new clients? And they may or may not know the answer. And whether they do or not, I start to dig deeper and do a diagnosis, just like a doctor would. Well, how many leads do you get each month now? And how many of those are qualified? And you can start to see the relationship between those first two questions. If you're not getting enough leads, or you are, but many of them are not qualified, then you have probably a marketing problem, right? Because you're not attracting enough of the right people. But if you dig deeper and you say, how many of those qualified leads make it to the first step in your sales process? Or how many of the qualified leads actually end up receiving a proposal? And what percentage do you close? If you've got some problems in those numbers, that might indicate more of a sales problem, right? You're getting people into your sales process, but they're falling out somewhere. So this is just kind of a high-level example of how we start to diagnose sales problems. Now, here's what's going on in mistake number 3. Most of the customers I speak to have some sort of customer relationship management or CRM tool that they use to track. It might be something sophisticated like Salesforce or HubSpot, or it might be a simple spreadsheet in Excel or something like that, or maybe even on a whiteboard. The point is, when I start asking those questions, regardless of what tool they're using, of course, if they're not using any tool, they probably don't have any of the answers. But even if they have one of these expensive, sophisticated tools, this is the response I tend to get from people. Kind of like, yeah, I don't know what those numbers are. I probably should, but I just don't know what they are. And I start to say, all right, well, we need to start tracking these things, because I can't really diagnose the problem unless I know where the problem is. And some of the common excuses that I hear is, we just don't track, we're too busy, or whatever, we don't have enough people, whatever reason they can come up with, or they don't know what to track. And another one I hear often from people that have these systems is, my software is so complicated, I know it tracks that stuff, but I just don't know how to get it out easily. And this is a problem, and so we wanted to solve this problem for people, because in order to accurately diagnose the root causes of your sales problems and build a true system, you have to track several key numbers. And so, just to refresh your memory of the system we went over before, at the bottom here in green, you see there's tracking and optimization. Tracking and optimization is kind of like a dashboard in your car. You don't technically need it to run the car. The car can run without a dashboard, but it sure does provide lots of valuable information to help you, A, prevent problems, and B, diagnose and troubleshoot problems when they start to happen, right? So we need to do some tracking. And within the world of solve sales and cash flow engineering and a systematic approach, we basically need three tracking systems. The first one is tactical. So if you're using a tactic like, let's say, email marketing or Google AdWords advertising, you want to be able to track that tactic. And typically the tools that you use to do that tactic will have tracking built in, like if you use something like MailChimp, it'll give you statistics and tracking on who's opening your emails and things. The next bucket is the assets. So if you have a website, you want to have something like Google Analytics on there to be able to track what's happening and how your website is performing. The last bucket is what we're really going to talk about today, is the sales tracking. It kind of rolls back up into those two numbers that we looked at earlier. The ability to track what's going on once people start contacting you, to understand how we're doing in that area. And so again, to refresh your memory, when we're talking about sales tracking, at a high level, we're talking about number of leads and how you're doing in the sales actual process and the conversion of leads into paying clients. But we need to dig deeper. And so that's where Sales Tracker comes in. This is a tool that Cash Flow Engineering and Solve Sales have co-developed based on all of our experience with our customers and clients. And I just outlined, this tracker is kind of a first step for people that aren't tracking or having difficulty pulling the numbers out of the tools that they're currently using. And so Sales Tracker really has four key elements, or tries to solve four problems that we run into with some of the other systems. First of all, it is super simple to enter a new lead. Salesforce, some of the other tools, while they're very powerful, and while Sales Tracker is not necessarily meant to replace those tools, it's far easier. It takes you about 30 to 60 seconds to enter a lead. As you'll see, there's just one line of data that you have to fill out. There's not multiple screens to click through. So you'll actually use it. A lot of times people implement these systems and then the sales team doesn't really want to use them, and they barely keep up to date with everything, and it becomes kind of useless. The second problem we wanted to solve was making following up with leads a breeze. This is very basic and simple, but it makes a big difference in your closing ratios. The third bullet here is really the meat and potatoes of Sales Tracker. This is where we have all of the charts and numbers tracked. So easy to look at the numbers and pinpoint what's going wrong, and you don't have to configure anything. It works right out of the box. And the fourth unique feature of Sales Tracker is we have self-diagnosis built in. So I'm going to go through some of the elements that make up these 4 points and show you how Sales Tracker works and what it looks like. So first of all, I know this is really small and you probably can't see it, but I just want to point out that all leads are tracked on one single line. I'm going to go through each part of this in detail in a minute, but that's what makes it simple, right? It just takes just a few seconds to fill out the first bits of information, and you've got your lead in the system. So let's dig into each little part of that one line. So first we have status, and that's when a new lead comes in, it'll be active, and you have a pull-down menu where you can easily select what stage or status a lead is in, and that is fully customizable, which we'll show you in a moment. Next, you can track whether this is a sale to a brand new client that you've never worked with or prospect versus an upsell or cross-sell to an existing customer. Next, you can customize if you have multiple people, multiple sales reps, or multiple people handling leads, you can customize that drop down and track the leads by sales rep. And then the lead date. This is really critical. The lead date is what kicks off all the tracking. And the lead date, and what I mean by a lead in the world of Sales Tracker, is a person has contacted you and expressed some interest in possibly doing business with you. It doesn't mean they're qualified yet, but they have expressed some interest in speaking with you and possibly doing business. This is not meant to track a list of cold, quote-unquote leads. If you've built a list that you intend to cold call or cold email, those are not leads in the world of Sales Tracker. A lead is a live person that's really interested in talking to you. So you start by just putting in the date that they first contacted you. Next, again, we're still looking at that one single line. I just got little snapshots here to show you the detail. So you can call the deal whatever you want. If you track by a person's name or a company name, whatever is good for you. If you want to have their website URL handy, you can do that. While this is not meant to replace a full CRM system or be a customer database, you can put contacts in here and notes. So as you follow up, you can there's little note things that pop up, and you can keep track of what you're doing. Next, we get into the marketing tracking. So we have two categories. First is lead type, which is sort of the high-level source of the lead, if you will. Was it a web lead or a referral, or did it come from a trade show that you went to? Lead source is that lower level or more detailed campaign level, if you will, tracking. So if you might get two website leads, but maybe one came from your Google advertising and one came from your Facebook advertising, for example. These two columns are totally customizable. You can write in whatever lead type and sources you want. Next, you'll track the first meeting. So that is after they've contacted you and they come in for their free consultation or whatever your process is. You want to make sure they get to that first meeting. Then after that first meeting, you're going to determine whether they're qualified or not. In the world of Sales Tracker, it's very simple. They're either qualified or not, yes or no. You can use whatever criteria you want. And then we'll put in the date that you actually made the proposal, which could be the same as the first meeting, or it might be a week later if you have to put a formal proposal together or something like that. And so you track that there. And then the last part on the bottom here allows you to track how much you proposed, the probability of your closing that deal, and then the close date. That's what closes the lead, and the tracking is that close date. And then you can put in the money that you finally agreed upon. It might be higher or lower than what you originally proposed, or maybe it's the same. And then the sales cycle will automatically calculate. And the last few columns here are just if you lose deals and you want to track the reasons so you can improve your marketing or sales pitches, you can track some of the reasons why you keep losing deals. And then if you work with people over time, you can put in the end date. If they stick around for 6 months or 6 years or whatever it might be, you can come back in here, close out that life cycle, and track your lifetime value of a customer. So that's everything you have to do in the lead tracking, and you just kind of use each line for each lead as you go. A couple of other things, and then we're going to get into the exciting part, which is the reporting and the numbers you need to really be paying attention to. So you'll notice there's little black triangles at the top of each column. Those, if you click on those, they'll pop out a note like you see on the bottom here. It'll tell you what that column is supposed to be for and how to use it, so the instructions are sort of built right in. The boxes on the top that you see, that's where you can customize all the drop downs, and it's as simple as erasing and typing in whatever you want the drop down will be, and it will automatically populate in the appropriate area. So the second promise of Sales Tracker is to make following up with leads a breeze. What I coach clients to do is set aside a specific time once a week. Could be Monday, could be Tuesday, or the end of the week. Say 30 to 60 minutes. You can sort all of your leads. It's a list, essentially, which is what most salespeople like to use, some sort of simple list. So you can sort them and just quickly scan down your active open leads and look at your notes and figure out who you need to follow up with, shoot off your 3 or 4 or 5 emails or phone calls, and within 30 minutes or so once a week you can get all your follow-ups done really easy. You don't have to log in and click through multiple contact pages and things like that, like a lot of the other systems make you do. So that's how you enter a lead, and that's how you do easy follow-up. Now let's get into the automated tracking and reporting and teach you a few things about the numbers you need to look at to accurately diagnose your sales and marketing problems. So the first is our KPIs, or key performance indicators. This is like the high-level dashboard, if you will. The leads, how many leads are you getting per month? How many first meetings are you having? How many qualified leads? And then how many proposals are you getting out? And then we start to get into the closed deals and the actual revenue. So this gives you a high-level snapshot of what's going on, and you can start to see trends and things like that. Next, what we look at is averages of those same key performance indicators. So you get these cool dashboard dials here to check in on the averages for things like deal size, number of leads that you're getting per month, etc. And this is how you can start to forecast, and you can go back to the original question I posed earlier when I work with a new client. Well, how many leads do you need to get to your goal of 10 new clients a month? Well, if you have a dashboard like this, you can look at it and see, well, on average, for every 10 leads I get, I need, I get one sale, so I guess I need, 50 leads to get 5 more sales, right? So that's how you start to use this tool.
Hey,
So those are the,
Forrest,
yes.
how much work do I have to do to get these dashboards?
Zero. That's the whole beauty of it. With Salesforce and HubSpot and a lot of these things, you have to configure the reporting, and that's what trips people up, because technically all those systems can do a lot of the stuff, but it's too difficult. With the sales tracker, there's only one thing you ever have to do: fill out the lead line that I showed you, and all these charts are automatically populated. So the next step, so those were the high-level key performance indicators. The next is actual sales process analysis. So I'm not showing you all the dials and charts that are in Sales Tracker. There's some other ones that aren't shown here. But what we've got here on the left, the top left, is leads closed. So that's a calculation of the percentage of leads you closed based compared to the raw number of leads you got. So in this case, for every 10 leads you get, you'll close 20% of them, so that means you get 2 new clients, right? And then we move on to first meeting. So of the total number of leads you got, how many make it to a first meeting? If there's a big drop-off between leads and first meeting, then we know we have an issue with our follow-up. As the leads come in, we're not following up appropriately. Or if we have a significantly low qualified number of leads, we know we might have a marketing problem. Maybe we're marketing to the wrong people. So you can start to see how you would diagnose by looking from each step or each link in the chain or part of the system, if you will, from one to the next, where we're low, where we're high, where we might be having a problem. So that's all about the sales process analysis you can do with Sales Tracker. Next, we get into the marketing performance, and I love these charts because they're nice and fun and colorful, but they also have really, really important information. The type of information most of our clients can't answer or give to us when we first start working with them. But once they start using Sales Tracker, it's right there for everybody to look at, and we can do a much better job. So when it comes to marketing, on the top we have the leads by type. So that again is that higher level categorization, web leads versus referrals versus maybe leads from speaking or trade shows. And as we go across to the right, then we're looking at not just the leads, but the deals that we've closed, the new clients, and then ultimately the revenue. And on the bottom, we have that deeper level analysis at the lead source or the campaign level. And the importance here is, let's say you're getting a lot of website leads, but you don't close a lot of them, and you're getting far fewer leads from speaking, but the ratio at which you close them or the average amount of money you get from those type of leads makes them actually more valuable than the lead source that drives a sort of a higher raw number of leads. So that's the sort of analysis you can do with Sales Tracker is to not get fooled by the wrong numbers, is to really dig in at different levels and understand what's truly working when it comes to the bottom line, which is the money at the end of the day. As you may have noticed on some of the slides so far, there's these little diagnosis buttons, and that's the fourth unique feature of Sales Tracker. We have self-diagnosis built right in, so if you're ever looking at any of the charts and you don't know what it means, not only will it explain what that chart is showing you, but as you can see in this little snapshot here, it'll talk about what are the likely causes of the problem if you're having a problem with that number. And you can actually self-diagnose right there, and then there's links to get more help from our companies if you need some additional help. So that self-diagnosis feature is something that I don't believe is in too many, if any, other of the sales tools out there. So a recap of today, first, use a marketing and sales system, not random disconnected parts. If you do nothing else, even if you don't track, even if you don't want to have a dashboard in your car, make sure you have an engine and wheels and the key parts that you need, because otherwise you're going to be banging your head against the wall. And don't start solving sales problems by treating the symptoms. Dig deep, take a few moments, take a few days, a few weeks, whatever it takes to start diagnosing those root causes and make sure you're really solving the real problem. And then be sure you have an easy way to track, report, and diagnose your key marketing and sales numbers, whether that's with a tool that you already have or something like Sales Tracker. And part of the today's presentation is to not only introduce you to these numbers and these concepts, but to offer Sales Tracker to you. It is available in Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. We normally sell it for $197, but today we're doing it for $49. It's a launch. It's something we've been using with our clients for quite a while, and they absolutely love it. I get a lot of comments from people that, again, have things like Salesforce and HubSpot, and they still use Sales Tracker on the side, and it's more fun for them, and sometimes they end up just getting rid of the other systems altogether. I'm sure we'll follow up with the link, but if you visit cashflowengineering.com/sales tracker, you'll be able to purchase that today for $49. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff to wrap us up here and open it up for some questions in a moment.
And again, the whole purpose of everything we do at Cashflow Engineering is to help you drive consistent, predictable, and sustainable cash flow. And I know by using the sales tracker, I have saved myself tons of hours and dollars by being able to focus directly on what's causing a leakage in my system. We talk about our three resources: time, energy, and money. For a few seconds, you can just save yourself lots of time, energy, and money just by looking at your tracker, looking at the possible causes, self-diagnosing, and then, of course, if you can't figure it out, we've got resources within Cashflow Engineering to help you. Forrest is on our faculty. He works hand in hand with us. Scott Stroud is a marketing guru too. He's one of my partners, and we have other resources for other types of problems. But the key to Cashflow Engineering is finding the simple, most effective way of solving and fixing a problem. So with that, we'll open it up for questions, and then we'll wrap this up in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Hey, this is Scott, and thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Forrest. Excellent presentation, and this is an exciting product. Yeah, there's some questions coming in here. I want to get to them, but everyone in your, if you've got questions, ask them in the question panel in your control panel there. It should be on the right side of your screen. There's just start typing in your questions. There's also a chat box there, and in that chat box I've put the link to purchase Sales Tracker and to go to that website that Forrest had just alluded to, cashflowengineering.com/sales tracker. Here's the first question. If we use Salesforce or Zoho or one of those other CRMs that you mentioned, how could we use Sales Tracker in conjunction with those?
Sure, that's a great question. First of all, this is not meant to replace those, as I mentioned. There's certain systems do that Sales Tracker is just simply not designed to do. It does work hand in hand with those in a couple of ways. I'm not a technical guy. I do have some clients, one for example that uses HubSpot CRM, and they used Zapier to actually connect it so it can actually feed the leads flowing into HubSpot right into Sales Tracker. So that's one way you might look into some technical integrations. But besides that, I've had a lot of clients that will go into Salesforce and run reports that pull out a lot of the information that Sales Tracker requires you to fill in that one line, and they'll actually go and put the last 6 months of information there. They'll pull it out and put it in there and do sort of a reverse analysis. So generally this is designed for you to start entering things going forward, but you can even put stuff in going backwards and analyze the last 6 months. So I see a lot of people doing that when they first get it, pulling the info out of their other systems and using it that way. The other thing is, you can hide and not use certain parts of Sales Tracker. So if as leads are coming in, you want to keep using your current system, you can just keep some information in Sales Tracker and just use it as your sort of follow-up list, and it'll still do all that great reporting. People just, there's a little bit of extra data entry maybe, but they just kind of use both because one thing does one thing well and Sales Tracker does something else well.
Yeah, and I can tell you that I've used CRMs for 20 years, since ACT was available on a 5.5-inch floppy disk, and you guys don't even remember that. But this is just
unfortunately I do, Scott.
Yeah. Well, this is just very, very simple to use. And
I want to point out one other thing that relates to that question, Scott. The other thing about using both is what I found is that when I go into companies that actually have Salesforce, they all have a spreadsheet like Sales Tracker, except it just doesn't do a lot of the stuff that Sales Tracker does. It's just really just a list. So the reality is people are already using spreadsheets like this in a lot of cases. So it's not even really adding anything. It's just a way better way to do it. So that's another point I wanted to make.
Good.
And I'll make one more point on that too, Scott. From my standpoint, I go into companies and they find that people aren't putting in this stuff into Salesforce because it's too cumbersome and requires too much time. And the setup is very, very difficult, and people aren't really aware of the full capability of such a system that's designed to do everything for everybody, as opposed to a simple system designed to get you right to the key heart of your problem. So I've found that salespeople generally are lone rangers in cases, and they just resent using those tools that require a lot of time and keep them from out of the field.
Good. Hey, Lynn asked this question: how many salespeople can use Sales Tracker?
Right now it's set up for up to 5 people. That's what you get in the rep the drop down list. I would say, yeah, so up to 5 right now. Technically you could have more, I suppose, but I think what is important to point out, and I want to make this clear, if you're a $200 million a year company and you have 50 salespeople, you can still use Sales Tracker, but that's the kind of situations that something like Salesforce and HubSpot are really designed for. This is really more for your smaller to mid-sized companies that have 2, 3, 1 salesperson, or 2 or 3 or 4, dealing with somewhere between, you know, a handful, 3 or 4 or 5 leads a month, up to say 40, 50 leads a month. When you start to get beyond, 4 or 5 sales reps and 50 leads a month, I think you'd probably either need multiple copies of Sales Tracker, or probably just want to stick with some of the bigger systems, but that gives you kind of a sense of it.
Yeah, and you can still, even if you're using a bigger system, you can still export into this just to get these reportings. This dashboard is just so cool.
Absolutely. And even if you worked at a huge enterprise level company and you're a salesperson and you just want to use this for yourself, it certainly can work for that as well.
Good. Those seem to be all the questions that have been coming in, and I think you've covered everything.
Okay. Great. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for attending today, and thank Jeff and Scott for having me. And obviously, you can reach us through our websites, and we look forward to helping you.
Yeah, I'll mention this, that once you purchase this from the website at cashflowengineering.com/sales tracker, that'll take you to an order form. You'll put in whether you're looking at the Google Sheets or Excel. You just make that choice, which format that you want, and immediately upon submitting, you'll have a sheet where you can download the appropriate either download Excel or go in and log in and claim your Google Sheets. So it's all instantaneous. You can be up and running in minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, one last thing. Talk about the instructional video.
Oh yeah, there's as I mentioned earlier, there are instructional pop-outs throughout Sales Tracker on almost every single thing, but on the page, the landing page where you'll get some more information, there is about a 12-minute video that walks you through a lot of the stuff we covered today in a little bit more detail in terms of how to enter things and what you're looking at. So yeah, that video is available on the sales page as well.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, Brian says, excellent tool. You can change the salespeople. Or can you change salespeople in and out? Can you get rid of one salesperson and put in another salesperson?
Yes, that's no problem, because that actually doesn't currently populate any reporting at this point, so that's not a problem. Yeah, you can absolutely switch people out.
Good. Brian, good question. Good to see you on the line. Thanks. That seems to be it. Forrest, excellent job. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for moderating. And everyone, if you got any questions, you can contact us through info@cashflowengineering or give us a phone call. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. See you next time.